Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. From 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear. Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show. Today is June 4th, 2018. It's 8 o'clock in the morning here in Eugene, Oregon. I want to thank you for joining us, and I want to thank KEPW for carrying our program. And we want to really thank all of our listeners and people who listen to this show. It is probably the only show that's on more than once a week, because Libby Halevi has a show dedicated to nuclear issues, but this is really the only daily show that really does concentrate on this issue. And I know sometimes I stray, but that's because I think it strays itself. The issue has many tentacles. Today we had with us a guest, Chuck Johnson from ICAN, International Campaign Against Nuclear Weapons. He was going to interview with us, and then very little while ago, about a half an hour ago, 15 minutes ago, they had an urgent phone conference that he had to participate in right at the same time that our interview was going to happen. So our interview went south very quickly this morning. So I'm here sort of unprepared. I had opened their webpage. We were going to talk about the things they were taking action on, and that had to change. So I thought what I'd do is talk to you about something that's been on my mind quite a bit, and it has to do with my own, any of you who may have been following the Sane Environmentalist, I've talked to Jerome Hebert about this a little bit, and it is about the fact that I think that we really do need self-love recovery. I think the real foundation for our living in this age of fission, I've kind of had this revelation that we are not going to live in the age of fission, that we are living in the age of fission. And what does that mean? That means that we are the generation that realizes we have been poisoned. We are living in a contaminated world. We are not keeping track of the human deaths, the human cost from this at all. The reason that the medical associations refuse to compile the statistics is because it would keep people at an alarming rate. So how do we cope with this knowledge? And that's what I call living in the age of fission. Like the thing that Thomas Ackerman and I have had this conversation many times about doing the right thing, right? Part of what keeps people from doing the right thing is they really lack self-love. And it's very easy to say, oh, just go love yourself, be good to yourself, put yourself first. But when you have been conditioned to respond to manipulation because your parents had issues. It's not that easy to just recover, which is why it's not that easy for any of us to just go, okay, let's face this nuclear contamination. So this was kind of the insight, the aha moment that I had with myself about if we all really practice self-love and we really focus on the self-love. I've been studying this. There's a website called selfloverecovery.com, and it is reconceptualizing codependency, narcissism, and narcissistic abuse, which is what many of us suffer from. Dr. Ross Rosenberg wrote a book called The Human Magnet Syndrome, and I have it on order. I have not read it, but I've listened to many of his YouTubes, and it kind of helped me formulate this idea that in order for us to come up with the solutions that are going to be needed to remediate our planet, they're going to have to be gut instinct things. And in order for you to really be responding to your guts, you have to love yourself. That's the one thing that we're taught when we are children, when it's drummed out of us to stop being who we are, is don't listen to yourself. You don't know what you're talking about. So we turn off that gut instinct that we're all born with. The reason a child cries spontaneously is because their instincts tells them that they need to cry. And they need to cry for longer than anybody in the room wants them to cry for. But they need to cry, so they keep crying because they haven't been bombarded with that shut up, who do you think you are statement, you know? And that is what we need because we are living in the age of fission. There's no it's coming. It's here. It's here. It's definitely here. Think about your neighbors. We didn't have Alzheimer's 100 years ago. That came with the onset of statins. The American Medical Association, there's a really great book called Death by Medicine. And it outlines the number of almost a million deaths a year that are 100% accountable to the American Medical Association in the United States. From misdiagnosis to disregard to just plain ignorance. So this is a very interesting thought. If the thing that's going to be our recovery, if the thing that's going to help us create the solutions is true self-love, because when you think about it, when you're in self-love, when you're on the road to recovery, you don't have time for the hostilities, the name-calling, the belittling, the need to dominate and control. One of the things, Jerome and I kind of got into this on Friday about the we mentality, we are not responsible. It's not that we being responsible parties are responsible for the future. Yes. But we're responsible for managing the future that we're in. We did not create this culture. We may be eating up the planet right now, but that's called entropy. Every system every creature that lives in a system eats up its environment in one way or another. Now, can it regenerate itself? That's the question, right? Humans right now are on a path of destruction, everything in our way. But part of this is about embracing the idea that we're here on purpose. Part of the destruction path has come from those technologists who believe that we have a right to destroy every single thing. It's that difference between anthropomorphic and ecomorphic, right? Whether we're going to focus things from the point of view of the earth or from the fact that we believe that the human species is the most superior species on the planet and can destroy anything with impunity. And that's how we've basically been living. But that isn't working. Look at the results we've got. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. Whether you get good results or not, right? Regardless of the results. We want to progress. And what we've done is actually regress. All this progress has made us regress because there's been no regard for the consequences of the aftermath. It was a very sad story. I'm sure many of you saw it a whale was beached up and it had 12 pounds of plastic in its stomach. That was really sad. 12 pounds of plastic. That's a lot of plastic, folks. Enough to kill a whale, a big gigantic whale. Well, we're doing that to ourselves. And all of us know people who are affected. And it's really hard to watch it. You know, this is partly why we turn off. And that's why I had this idea about self-love recovery, because people have asked me, how can you get up and talk about this? And, you know, doesn't it make you upset? Well, for me, it's facing the truth. I don't mind discussing the reality of it. Like, people don't like me to discuss the fact that St. Louis is still not fixed. Even the areas where they say they've remediated still could go back and be remediated. That's how radioactive contamination is. It takes a long time to scrub clean. It's not just, oh, we're going to go in and clean it up. I guarantee you there's still higher levels around there. Acceptable, but higher levels. You know, we have contaminants all over our planet. We need a whole entire industry of recovery for this planet. And I agree 100% with Mark Robinowitz, who I interviewed last Monday, who said what we need is truth and reconciliation councils for all the polluters. That's not the first time I've heard this. This is kind of a meme out there. This is like an underlying theme where we're talking about different panels that are talking about how do we move forward. Because we have been offended. I mean, they're literally chopping our families apart. So what do we do? Well, I think the solution is self-love recovery. I have been fascinated and gained a lot of help from this website that I found, selfloverecovery.com. Because when you recognize why we fit into these same patterns of abuse and how we can cut it off at the pass, and actually it's really so easy. Just love and honor yourself. Like, refuse to say negative things about yourself. Just those few acts, refusing to participate in negative, and if you find yourself, you figure out a different way to operate. This book, I can't wait to get the human magnet syndrome. You know, he also coined a term called self-love deficit disorder, which is pretty interesting because that is in fact where we see a lot of things going wrong. I mean, we have a planet full of billions of magnificent human beings who feel subjugated day after day after day. And all they do is tell themselves negative things day after day after day, or say negative things about people that they care about, that keeps them apart, that separates them. Those are all the messages of people who want to control you at some point in your life that you're responding to. And this is why we have to listen to our gut, because out of the gut are going to come the solutions for the remediation, for the things that are like seriously wrong. I mean, just this morning I had this interview set up with Chuck Johnson. Things are happening behind the scenes that we don't see. The international campaign against nuclear weapons is much more active than people can even guess. And that is one of the, I think, the best blessings of this radio channel has been. Because this radio channel has given voice to people that heretofore would be hit and miss on a few independent radio stations. But thank you to Jules, who has given voice to the Nuclear Hot Seat and the Age of Fission radio show, where for the last 3 years, maybe, I forget, 2015, so I guess it's coming on a full 3 years, we've been able to interview people who, on a regular basis, on a quite regular basis, you know, and we've been able to put the seed out there because people are active. The ICANN won a Nobel Peace Prize for their work because they're doing work daily. Things are coming up. Right now, everybody is watching this North Korea summit, which, you know, I don't know. I think it's I can't cuss. I think it's, personally, this is a little radical, and it's actually probably 100% way blown off, but I forget who I said this to yesterday, but I said, I think I wouldn't doubt if Trump isn't talking to Kim Jong-un that says if he gets indictment papers, he's just going to go over to Russia and he wants to live as an oligarch over in Russia in the closed world, so who knows? I don't trust him at all. So this thing with Kim Jong-un, this whole North Korea summit, it is shaking up international relations. Isn't it interesting how Trump came into our government and shook up everything, like understaffed all the agencies, has done all these things, put Rick Perry in charge of the Department of Energy, the man who said oops when asked what they were. Remember that? So, and now he's going after this North Korea, this on again, off again game that he's playing with our lives. Essentially, it's basically with our lives, I think it is up to us, folks. It's evident that it gets down to an individual on an individual basis. I can't find it. I had a book. I ordered Carl Grossman's book, Weapons in Space, and honestly, it's a little tiny book. People need to read it. We have got to take charge of our lives and that means actively engaging, but I don't think people can actively engage until they really do love themselves, until you feel the courage enough. And how do you find your courage? Is by realizing that you have a right to do certain things. You have a right to stand up for yourself. People so constantly beat themselves up for nothing because they're not meeting up to other people's standards. We have a planet to save, people. We need people to be healthy and be willing to face it because we have big challenges. Let me go to the ICANN page anyways, because that's what Chuck and I were going to talk about. And status, let me open up this link. I apologize for doing this a little bit last minute, but it was kind of a last minute thing that happened here. Signature ratification, status of the UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Let's see where that's at. It will remain open. The Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons opened for signature at the United Nations headquarters on November 20th, on 20 September 2017, and will remain open indefinitely. Once 50 nations have ratified it, it will be, or acceded to it, it will enter into force. So, 17 have adopted it. Let's see, adopted 7 July, full text of adopted treaty. Let's see, who has signed? Has the United States signed? No, not very many people have signed. Not many countries. Signed, Algeria, Austria, Bangladesh, Bolivia, Brazil, Cabo Verde. Did you guys know that Cabo Verde was a nation? Central African Republic, Chile, Comoros, Congo, Costa Rica, Cote d'Ivoire, I think that's in Africa, Cuba, the DRC, which is Congo, Ecuador, El Salvador, Fiji, Gambia, Ghana. Oh, this is kind of funny, isn't it? All the ones that are scared to death of the nuclear weapons. Guatemala, Guyana, Holy See. The Holy See is considered a nation in the United Nations. I did not know that. Honduras, Indonesia, Ireland, Jamaica, Kazakhstan. It's almost a laughable list. I hate to say it. Kiribati, Laos, Libya, Liechtenstein, Madagascar, Malawi, Malaysia, Mexico, Namibia, Nepal, New Zealand, Nicaragua, Nigeria, Palau, Palestine, Panama, Paraguay, Peru, Philippines, St. Vincent and Grenadines, Samoa, San Marino, Sao Tome and Principe. That's actually a nation. South Africa, Thailand, Togo, Tuvalu, Uruguay, Vanuatu, Venezuela, Vietnam. And that's it. 58 have signed. So the rest of them are like, yeah, not so much. Therein lies the problem. The issue is the brainwashing that nuclear is a good idea. That's the problem, is that nuclear keeps us safe. We have been lied to. So let's talk about the ICANN. Let's go to the home button again. I wanted to talk, I was very much looking forward to what ICANN was doing. And frankly, it was kind of interesting that they had an emergency meeting, considering we've got this nuclear summit coming up with, Trader Trump. And I am going to call him Trader Trump because I believe he is 100% a traitor. And I know somebody said it makes you sound stupid, but I honestly, I don't know how people cannot call him that. It's so obvious that he's talking about pardoning himself. UN General Secretary praises nuclear ban treaty but fails to take a stand. Isn't that the problem with the UN? Cancellation of U.S. DRPK summit proves nuclear ban treaty is the only path to denuclearization. Well, it is the only path, but they're going to have the summit. I think they're going to have the summit to figure out a reason why to have a war. That's what I think. Let's look at the current event notifications, as I want to do when I do these things. Wisconsin Radiation Protection, that's the name of the company. Alter Metal Recycling, non-emergency. Source found. Oh, good, they found one of those missing. A scrapyard identified a radioactive source in an outgoing load of waste intended for the landfill. The radioactive source is 1 inch long and approximately a half an inch in diameter. Wow. The U.S. Department of Health and Services responded to the scrapyard on May 25th and measured the maximum exposure of 210 millirems per hour on contact with the source. The source was confirmed to not be leaking. There are no markings or numbers on the source, and isotope identification is pending. It is not known how long the scrapyard was in possession of the source. The source is now in a secured location in the scrapyard. Additional updates will be provided. That original date happened on 5/23, so we do have an update. On May 31st, the department performed characterization of the source at the scrapyard with assistance from the EPA. It has been determined that it is BA-133 source with an activity of between 350 to 500 microcuries. The department has not been able to determine the origin of its source. It will continue to work in the scrapyard to determine the proper disposal path. Okay, what is BA on the nuclear scale? What isotope is BA? Barium. Okay, I guess I could have guessed that, but I would not have thought it, to be honest. Power reactor in Salem, New Jersey, unanalyzed condition, accident mitigation, current operating power at 100, so I guess they didn't shut down. Unit 2 was not in scram mode, thank goodness. Look, does this one say, during the period of evaluation of tornado missile vulnerabilities and potential impacts to technical specification plant equipment, it was determined that the power cables to a safety-related motor control center in the center water intake structure are not adequately protected from tornado-generated missiles. During walkdowns, it was identified that the installed SW pipe tunnel barrier is not adequate. A tornado could generate missiles capable of striking power cables and rendering the SWMCC inoperable. So they fixed that. I guess that's what happened. The next one, this is what's reported just for today, folks. So this is 6/2, the event date 5/31, Framed Home Inc. in Virginia, and they are a licensee. Defects and noncompliance. Failure of relays to change state. The following report was received via fax. Identification of basic activity. Eaton NBF66F relay. Basic activity supplied by Framatome Inc. Nature of defect. While performing analysis on AC Eaton NFB relays, Framatome discovered that unless a specific application technique is utilized while applying epoxy to the pin with a crossbar, the potential for the epoxy to become foreign material is introduced. The foreign material could migrate to the area between the moving and stationary magnets, preventing the relay from completing the change of state when called upon. This change does not occur in a de-energized direction. Framatome has not been notified of any occurrence of this condition. That is potentially, I'm sitting here kind of stunned, because what this is telling us is that there is a part that this company makes, Framatome. Defects and non-compliance. So, applying epoxy group, the potential for the epoxy to become a foreign material is introduced. Framatome has not been notified. A different epoxy application technique was utilized between 2008 and May 2013 on relays provided to H.B. Robinson, the only customer requiring the epoxy application by Framatome. Thus, a potential for this defect is limited to those relays provided during that time. 307 potentially affected safety relays with epoxy applied to their relay pins were supplied to H.B. Robinson Nuclear Plant. H.B. Robinson Nuclear Plant. Framatome is working to provide advice to the customer on the path forward related to the defect. Well, that's a pain in the neck. Wow. H.B. Robinson Nuclear Plant. I don't even know where the heck that is. Let's take a little looky-loo. H.B. Robinson Nuclear Plant. It pops right up. And even plant jobs. Where is this guy? South Carolina. That's where my niece lives, somewhere around there. I don't know if she lives near there, but that would be horrible. So we have a potentially faulty nuclear power plant. That's just great. But don't worry, everything's fine. Just fine. You people worry way too much. Who cares? Your grandchildren get cancer. Come on. We need to have energy. Louisiana Radiation Protection Division. This is from Friday, folks, June 1. This is a non-emergency in the state of Louisiana, Pacific Georgia Consumer Products, LLC. 3 fixed gauges with stuck shutters. The huge, as we're used to hearing about this. Here's another one. Patient care nurse exposed to iodine 131 following patient urination. Oh, what a pain in the neck. Didn't tell you that at radiation school, did they? Florida Bureau of Radiation Control, Bayfront HMA Medical Center. Non-emergency. A registered nurse called Florida Health Department of Health, Bureau of Radiation Control, Environmental Radiation Materials, Tallahassee Licensing and Enforcement to report that she was exposed to iodine 131 following the patient's urination during the patient's care. The nurse was informed that she received a positive bioassay subsequent to the exposure event. Her shoes were impounded for decay. Other employee bioassays conducted were negative. The nurse reported that she did not conduct urine cleanup during the patient care. The radiation safety officer was called and a voicemail was left requesting a return call. Wow. So she did not clean up the urine of a contaminated person, that means there's someone else in the hospital that's wandering around who was contaminated, and they don't even know. And she called up knowing that she'd been infected. Or exposed, I guess that's what happens. That's what it's called, exposed. Lord, that's a scary thing. West Virginia, rad materials. Let's see, what's this guy say? The next one. This was on Friday, so it's not like all these events happen today. But they're happening every month. Shutter for fixed gauge would not open. Someone told me that they sort of expect these things to not open. There's a certain element of decay that happens between the time they make them, and that's what causes these things to go dodgy. So, non-power reactor, University of Missouri, Columbia, in the state of Missouri, non-emergency. So what does it say? Technical specification deviation. Oh, but don't worry, because it's not a real nuclear reactor. It's at a university. That's what they keep telling us. Oh, and our old friend Fermi. Fermi in Michigan had an accident mitigation, potentially uncontrolled radiation release. But it is in 100% operation mode, so don't worry. Everything is fine. Just fine. Reactor water cleanup system declared inoperable. On May 31st, 2018 at 1420 EDT, the reactor water cleanup system isolation differential flow, which they call RWCU, high function was declared inoperable as a result of the indicating downscale. This condition would have prevented the primary containment isolation for valves at the RWCW system from automatically isolating on a high differential flow condition. Wow. The cause of the event is under investigation. RWCD was shut down, and the affected penetration flow paths were isolated in accordance to the station's procedure per Fermi technical specifications. So again, don't worry, folks. There is no harm to human health, or that's their story, and they're sticking with it. So you know what I have not seen, because I went to the website of Columbia Generating Station. Remember, it had a scram, and it went down, and then I didn't see anything about it, but when I went back to their website, it said that it was perfectly fine, that it was back online and everything was no problem again. But I did not see something. Oh my gosh, here's a report. What was this date? I'm sitting here clicking through the past reports. 5:30. Because it's all mostly the usual, but then you come into something like this where it says, possible plutonium sphere found. Wow. And it's considered a non-emergency. Florida Bureau of Radiation Control. A resident of Waterford, a senior living center, recently passed away. His son contacted a licensed firearms dealer and estate appraiser to assess his father's estate value. The appraiser discovered a metal canister containing a grayish silver marble-sized sphere. The certificate in the deceased person's effect states that the sphere is plutonium and was a gift given in appreciation for the deceased's contributions to the Manhattan Project. It also included the deceased personal effects in a glass said to be of atomic bomb testing. The certificate is signed by Robert Oppenheimer. The estate appraiser contacted ATF. The ATF special agent contacted the Bureau of Radiation Control duty officer. A preliminary investigation is scheduled for Tuesday, May 22nd, 2018. So there they have an update here, May 22nd, 2018. Lord. In appreciation for the Manhattan, his work on the deceased passed away years ago, and his wife, who had her spouse's possessions since then, is moving from the senior center. Their son was given the name of an estate liquidator to assess their belongings. The appraiser came across a metal shoeshine-sized canister containing what he described as marble-sized pellets and sandy glass that had plutonium marked on it. There was also a framed reference letter addressed to the deceased from Robert Oppenheimer, thanking him for his contributions to the Manhattan Project. Unbeknownst to the Sun, the appraiser then contacted the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives with his concern. The Sun stated that the material in the canister was fused sand from the Trinity test site and did not know why the appraiser was concerned about it. Doing, doing, doing. I don't know. It's the friendly atom. I'm part of the Manhattan Project. Holy moly. Really? Doink, doink, doink. I don't know what everybody's busting all this fuss about. It's just a little bit of plutonium. Lord. I think this earth deserves to be rid of human beings at a certain point, man. This is about the self-love recovery. See, this is why I'm going back to this self-love recovery thing. Because if people really did love themselves, we would be shocked. We would people out there would actually be much more engaged politically, actively. I mean, part of why people don't get engaged is because they don't love themselves. They're like, oh, it doesn't matter. This always happens to me. This is just our dumb luck. No, it's not. We are at the end of a civilization that's about to collapse, that is collapsing in on itself. Let's keep reading with these fun, delightful reports. I cannot believe that this is an industry that is allowed to keep going day after day. Listen to this. Potential individual overexposure. Florida Bureau of Radiation Control, Sun Nuclear Corporation. Sun Nuclear Corporation's RSO contacted Florida Bureau of Radiation Control to report a Luxel badge report received from a Landauer dosimeter indicating the exposure to Sun Nuclear employees of 6.6 rams. Wow. The RSO believes Landauer mixed up the badges and incorrectly reported the exposure on the individual's record. A different employee's badge had been left in the calibration room overnight. The badge exposure reading was recorded at normal exposure levels. The RSO contacted Landauer about the situation, and they are conducting an internal review. So don't worry about it. Do not worry your pretty little head about it all. So that's that. That is this thing. Let us go to this website called selfloverecovery.com, because I actually really do think that this concept about managing our emotions to the point, because I really believe that part of what's happened is we have been emotionally debilitated and made to feel inadequate and made to feel like it doesn't matter what we do and that we have no power over anything. That's partly why people shut down over nuclear. So it's not that we are not responsible. Yes, we are actually destroying our planet just by living in this culture, but we didn't create it. And I find that to be victim blaming, because we have been, now there may have been a lot of taking it for granted and being spoiled and not really paying attention to what the answers were. I do assume full responsibility for me not knowing that San Onofre wasn't a nuclear power plant. I had no idea that it was a nuclear power plant my entire life until I moved to Eugene, Oregon. And I lived next to it most of my adult life, all of my childhood and most of my adult life. So I assume responsibility for allowing myself to be that ignorant, and I just took it for granted. So what's that done for me now? I don't take things for granted. If I'm not 100% sure about what something is, I'll find out what it is. I was so busy making ends meet, just getting by, raising 2 kids on my own in Los Angeles, that it didn't even occur to me when I drove past down the freeway. I didn't stop in San Clemente, for goodness sakes. I was driving down to San Diego to see my family. You know, I drove past, the mountains down to Idlewild and down to San Diego very frequently that way. And I never once thought San Onofre was a nuclear power plant. And you know what? There's a lot of people around that, not just that issue, but a lot of issues, people just don't know. And people get mad, a lot of activists. This is one of my big complaints about the peace movement. This is one of the reasons why I really, Kevin Blanch's anger appealed to me, because fundamentally I agree with that sort of angry, vitriolic point of view about that we have been misled, not only misled, but we have been disappointed and sort of taken down the rosy path of compliance by the peace activists and by the anti-nuclear movement. It's like, yeah, well, we need to have our credibility so we can go into court. Well, really, it gets even deeper than just the nuclear industry. It gets into the political system. What kind of a system allows information to be suppressed and then say that you have all the full, true information? Most people don't realize that the World Health Organization is censored, essentially, by the International Atomic Energy Agency. They systematically do not allow the World Health Organization to truly investigate the harm from nuclear contamination. And the reason is they want the energy. It's a potential that they can have. It's a power that is uncontrollable. And they want to harness that uncontrollable power. So they have actually literally determined that it is worth risking our lives and our future, not just our children, but the future of all humanity, the future of all life on this planet. And frankly, I don't know if you guys haven't noticed, but that's pretty much what they're doing. Murder, death, kill. The animals are dropping off like flies, and frankly, so are humans dropping off like flies. You know, in Japan, the birth rate is in a negative position. Let's take a look at the mass animal deaths. I haven't done that in a little while. Oh, what a fun topic to drink your coffee with. Well, this is the thing. I feel like this. For me, paying attention to these things actually gives me courage. It lifts my spirit. I don't get all depressed about it because guess what? We're in it, folks. For me, this is like facing it. It makes me feel as if we're going to find the solutions. We're not going to find solutions if we don't look at it, if we don't know what's looking, if we don't look and try to figure out what the patterns are. And when we know the patterns are, the pattern is complete 100% denial. That's the pattern. Let's don't talk about it. Let's be freaked out. Let's just continue to abuse and manipulate each other. Push each other away. No, we need to embrace each other and come from a place of love and acceptance and self-love and self-acceptance. As usual nowadays on this, listen to this. So we're May 28th. I think the last time I read this was like the 8th or 9th, and oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. When you add up all the animals, 12 dead dolphins found along the coast in the Ukraine, 12 dead whales washed up in New Zealand, tons of fish in Vietnam, thousands of dead fish in Mexico, 13 seals in Russia, thousands of fish in Turkey, 3 tons of fish in Colombia, 10 tons in Toho Lake, Benin, 3 dead whales found on the beaches of California, 1,500 tons of fish in Vietnam, 10,000s of fish in a Texas lake. Wow. That must have... Why didn't we hear about that? That was May 21st. So this goes back to May 21st. I'll just stop there. This is just unbelievable. Thousands and thousands of animals dying. Animals are dying around the planet. The fish are just off the charts. 38 dead pilot whales dead in New Zealand in April. I mean, we've got lots of issues going on. This is really hard for us to look at, but the thing is, if we don't look at it, it's going to continue. I mean, we have to have some accountability. That's the issue. It's up to us to decide that we're going to face it. And I honestly think that self-love recovery is the way that we're going to face it. Because it'll give us the courage. It allows us, when you're listening to yourself, when you're in a state of self-love, you respond to your gut reactions. And the solutions for these things, the ideas, are going to come from gut reactions. They're going to come from those moments where people go, hey, I want to go to college and I want to become a biologist. I want to figure out how we're going to take the radioactivity out of the seawater. And we need people to study that, people with an inclination to go and study. We're not going to find solutions in an instant, but we're going to find it through inspiration. And what choice do we have? Because right now we are in a contaminated zone. Our petri dish is putrefied, so to speak. You know what I mean? We don't really have options, folks. It's, I don't know if many of you have ever seen this, but one of my favorite movies is called Drop Dead Fred. And it's about self-recovery, self-love recovery. It's about this little girl who has an imaginary friend, and he won't go away until she gets happy, right? And so, that's essentially what we have to do, is we have to get happy in order for us to live the lives that we want and to come up with the solutions. We're going to have the courage to face these things. The thing is, once you really embrace yourself, the idea that this is our reality, like not facing this is not facing our reality. And it is unfortunate, but in human history, there's been lots of things that many, many masses of people have had to live through that was unfortunate. And it seems that humanity has a penchant for recreating this. And this is why I like this self-love recovery thing, because one of the things that Dr. Rosenberg talks about is we are going to recreate these negative circumstances until we recover our self-love. It doesn't matter. So we got rid of the slavery and we got rid of a lot of the horrible things that we considered in our modern culture to be completely despicable for humanity. Worldwide mass, although there is slavery going on, and there's actually more slaves now than were ever in. So maybe that argument isn't true, because percentage-wise we have a lot less slaves. Let's put it that way, because we have billions more people, right? But numbers-wise, we have more slaves now on the planet in the sex trafficking and the slave industry in the Middle East and in Asia than we had when the slave trade was going on in the States, by numbers, but not by percentage of population. So the human magnet syndrome, that's the name of the book by Dr. Ross Rosenberg. And let me just read you what it encapsulates, okay, so that you can understand what it says. The human magnet syndrome, love force, not only brings two perfectly matched partners together, but it also keeps them captive in the lasting and breakup-resistant dysfunctional relationships. Rosenberg explains why so many people fall in love with a soulmate, but awaken to cellmate reality. Not only does the book rewrite what is known about codependency and pathological narcissism, it explains why the opposite codependent narcissistic attraction force is king. And I extrapolated this into a farther thing, not just those intimate relationships, but really if we look at how we respond in culture, in our society, to our government, it's very much like this. I had this big bling of a moment where I realized the way out of the Age of Fission, the way to live through the Age of Fission for humanity to even have a half a chance of surviving, is for us to truly embrace ourselves, really love ourselves, start listening to our gut, because it's going to be out of those gut inspirations that we are going to find the answers. And it's funny because in my intro, I often tell people, put your courage feet on. And by that, I mean, a lot of times when we do things, we have to walk the walk when we feel afraid, when we don't want to, we want everything to be comfortable. But frankly, it's very easy to live your life. How do I say this? It's easy to live your fears. It's much easier to live your fears than to live your dreams. Because when you live your fears, you've created a box. You keep your safety zone. You keep the people out that might move you into a different place, that might challenge your comfort zone, might challenge your narrative. But you're not going to find the solutions in the happy life. You're going to have this constant, in the human magnet syndrome, they talk about this chronic loneliness, and that is what we have in our society. We have a sense of chronic loneliness. We often hear people say, well, I'm not lonely. I like being alone, and I love living alone. Well, we've gotten used to it. Humans are a very interesting creature, but we are not solitary individuals. We're pack animals. And part of what's happened is we have been conditioned to just accept murder, death, kill. We have children with cancer. People are dying of, when we look at all the diseases that people are getting, and frankly, they're induced by the medical industry. I have to say I'm shocked that Americans take so many pharmaceuticals, that people my age have just caved and gone to the doctor like, well, okay, but I still want to have my coffee made in my coffee because yum, it is up to us. We've got to stop being self-harming and self-hating because it's not creating the solutions that we want. It's not creating the life that we want. The definition of doing something over and over again, I guess I call that insanity. If you're not getting any of the same results, you just keep doing it because that's what you've always done, and that's always what makes you feel good and makes you feel safe, and at least you know what the boundaries are, and doggone it, I'm going to stick with it even if it doesn't give me what I want. That's kind of where we're at now, folks. So we need to move beyond our comfort zone. We need to move out, be willing to risk and share ourselves with each other and with ourselves. Stand in the mirror and tell yourself that you love yourself. Give yourself the courage to thoroughly embrace who you are and listen to your gut instincts. I was thinking about this for about, 10 minutes, right before the show when Chuck called and said he had this big mega emergency. Like, he really profusely apologized. We were quite looking forward to the interview. And I thought, interestingly enough, I can, beyond nuclear, Jerry Pollitt's, what's it called, Northwest, I forget, I wish I could remember it. There are organizations around the country that are fighting for justice. And there are people going to work every day, getting up, doing this full-time on our behalf. We don't even know them. They don't even know us. But they're working for the greater good. Why do we not see them? Because the people in power want you not to see them, to let you think that they're not really there, that their efforts are meaningless. Just like the abuser will tell their spouse, your family doesn't care about you. I'm all you've got. It's the same thing. That's what the nuclear industry is doing to us. So we've got to be smarter. We got to put our courage feet on. Unfortunately, there is no battered country shelter to go to. We can't just, decide we're going to go get help as a country and we're going to reestablish it. This is us. This is it. This is why this summit, in my view, with Kim Jong-un is just a big show. It's just going to be all about them laying the groundwork as to why they need to bomb the daylights out of North Korea. That's what I think. I don't trust it at all. I'm super skeptical about this guy. I'm skeptical about all of it. And I don't believe it. I don't believe it at all true. I think everything that Trump does is evil and will come of no good. But that's my opinion. You know what they say about opinions. Everybody has one. you listen to these details on the titles of these articles on the ICANN webpage. It's icanw.org. UN Secretary praises nuclear ban treaty but fails to take a stand. Yeah. But the UN Secretary General also allows the International Atomic Energy Agency to continue in their contract against the wishes of the physicians who quit, to allow the International Atomic Energy Agency, to basically mute and subvert the mission of the World Health Organization when it comes in regards to nuclear. Deutsche Bank to stop banking on the bomb. That was May 24th. Toronto calls on Canadian government to join the nuclear ban treaty. Austria ratifies the nuclear ban treaty. Will responsible states please stand up? Let's read this thing. We have about 5 minutes. I think we can get a little bit of this one, what they're talking about. Deutsche Bank to stop. I guess they are, because banking on the bomb. Big news from the financial sector and an update from its financial policies. Germany's Deutsche Bank excludes nuclear weapons producers. In a statement on its website, Deutsche Bank elaborates, the policy published today makes clear that Deutsche Bank avoids entering into or continuing any kind of business relationship with entities with clear direct links to the following types of controversial weapons business: cluster munitions, anti-personnel mines, chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear weapons, controversial conventional weapons. The move follows intense pressure and negotiations by campaigners from Don't Bank on the Bomb and ICANN Germany. In acknowledgement of civil society's significant role in achieving this new policy, campaigner Jonathan Seal was invited to speak on belief of ICANN on behalf of the ICANN at the Deutsche Bank's General Assembly today. Well, we have 2 minutes. He closed his statement with a clear reminder, while this policy is a great first step, the Deutsche Bank must follow up on this commitment. Ladies and gentlemen, congratulations on your new policy. Now we expect the words to be followed by action. Deutsche Bank should publish an exclusion list to clarify which companies are affected by your definition. And she should report regularly on the implementation. You've taken an important step, but that's not the end. It's the beginning. With luck, this beginning will contribute to the end of the nuclear threat. Yeah, we're getting close on time. Mikey Benines from Don't Bank on the Bomb welcomes the new policy by Deutsche Bank, saying, this is an important step in the right direction. With the new policy, Deutsche Bank clearly recognizes that investments of any type in nuclear weapon companies are unacceptable. With growing threats to nuclear weapons, this announcement is a timely reminder of the choice we all face, nuclear weapons or our collective future. We welcome this decision and hope to see the divestment by Deutsche Bank from all nuclear weapons producers. So that was pretty awesome. Look, we've got less than, I guess we're hitting 30 seconds left on the radio show. I want to thank KEPW again for carrying our radio show. And hopefully we'll be able to book Chuck Johnson on. There's some technical issues about what will happen in a month from now. Put your courage beyond, and that means take action. And truly go to selfloverecovery.com and really learn how to recover yourself so that we can all start listening to our gut, because it's going to take all of us to help save our planet. Put your courage feet on, you guys. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Question everything. Intelligent Radio.